For 39 years, she has been with the Indian Foreign Service, rising to the topmost position as Foreign Secretary. And with just about 6 months left to go, Sujatha Singh was told by the government that her responsibilities as Foreign Secretary were being curtailed. It's a decision that's come as a shocker for many in the Foreign Service community. Joining us now in her first television interview since this decision was announced, the former Foreign Secretary Sujatha Singh. Thank you, ma'am, very much for speaking to us. Did you have any inkling, any idea that this was coming your way?
Vishnu, first let me say that it is with some reluctance that I'm doing this interview. But having said that, I felt that I needed to do it. I needed to do it because I want an honorable exit. What do I mean by an honorable exit? I don't mean a tenure as an ambassador. I don't mean a tenure in the UPSC. I mean an exit that is in keeping with what I have been as an individual, with what I have been as an officer, with what I have been as a Foreign Secretary. And the commentary that I have seen over the past 2 days has pained me deeply. I believe that it was not necessary to get low and dirty. I wanted to give in my papers and leave without any ceremony and without any fuss. But unfortunately, that has not been the case, and I believe that my reputation has been tarnished. I believe that the social media has gone into overdrive, and I believe that there are stories that are being planted that tarnish whatever I have been as an officer over these years in service. Did I see it coming? Vishnu, it's not the first time that I've seen a new government take office. I was Joint Secretary West Europe when the UPA government came in, and Shyam Saran was the Foreign Secretary at that time, and he did me the honor of asking me to be his Joint Secretary West Europe. And that was a time when, you remember, we did the India-EU Strategic Partnership, the first joint action plan, and there were so many visits. In many ways, the same euphoria that is presently greeting the new government here.
Yes.
Dr. Manmohan Singh's first visit to the United Kingdom, then his visit to The Hague,
Yes.
the joint action plan. And I know that it takes time for any new government to settle in.
But ma'am, is that what your concern may be? That this is a government that feels it is its prerogative to have top bureaucrats of their choice. You were appointed by a previous government. You have a political, you've been politically connected in terms of your family. Is that something perhaps that went against you, your interests?
Vishnu, I don't believe I'm politically connected because of my family. I think you can meet any officer in the service and they'll tell you that I'm anything but a political animal. There are other officers who have used the fact of their father's connections, and I haven't. Yes, my father was the Director Intelligence Bureau. He went on to become Governor of Uttar Pradesh, but after he retired, that was it.
Right.
And I have never, ever sought to play up what my father was.
Right.
As a matter of fact, that's a running point of contention between him and me, because you'd have delegations coming and visiting countries where I was serving,
Yes.
and they wouldn't know that I was my father's daughter, because I said I stand on my own merits.
Okay. But ma'am, tell me this. Has there been any instance in which you felt that your advice was not welcome at the PMO?
Never.
Right. Was there ever any real interface between the PMO and the Foreign Secretary?
Always. It's a different style of interaction. With Dr. Manmohan Singh, the Foreign Secretary had direct access to the Prime Minister. It was one-on-one.
Yes.
And that used to be fairly regular. And I would speak to him and tell him about what the issues of the day were. And he'd give me his advice. With the present government, I must say that I had As soon as I knew about the invitation that was planned to be issued to the SARC heads of government,
Yes.
I asked for a call on the Prime Minister designate, and I got it. And that was a direct interface which went off very well. And then there was a second interface where he asked me to come, and that went off very well too.
So where did it go wrong, ma'am?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Ma'am, till this date you don't know where it's gone wrong.
Look, I've done the best that I could as a civil servant that has always believed in doing the best that a civil servant should. And you know, sometimes I think that probably it was a decision that had been taken.
A decision that had already been taken.
A decision that had already been taken, and that nothing I could have done would have made a difference.
Why do you think the decision would have been taken?
Let me say that the first 8 months, and we are in the 8th month
Yes.
now, of the new government's foreign policy engagements have been intensely successful.
Yes.
They have been the most charged and successful engagement of any new government that you can think of.
Yes.
And they went beautifully. It was the Ministry of External Affairs that delivered.
Yes.
And it was a team of dedicated officers, of men and women in my ministry and in our embassies and posts overseas, who did the meticulous preparation and who delivered under my leadership.
But ma'am, there are specific...
I brought it all together.
Yes.
Naturally, it was the Prime Minister who was the driving force, ably supported by the External Affairs Minister, but none of them can operate in a vacuum. You have to have a ministry that is implementing these big decisions on the ground within a strategic vision, within a strategic framework. And we worked in that strategic framework, and we worked to make it happen.
But ma'am, do you believe the PMO is working in a vacuum?
I believe that the Ministry of External Affairs has supported the Prime Minister and his office and the External Affairs Minister with all the resources at its command.
Yes.
I believe that our missions and posts have worked beautifully in a team spirit. And I believe that every single officer who has worked under direction, and as Foreign Secretary, I think that I have had a role to play in this.
At the end of the day, do you believe that the role that you talk about has not been respected because the PMO has a style of functioning perhaps not the way it's been in the past?
Well, look, every Prime Minister has a different style of functioning, and every Prime Minister's office has a different style of functioning. You respect that. I mean, as a bureaucrat who's worked with PMO for God knows how many years, you wait for it to arrive at its style of functioning, and you work with the people you find. And I have always been a very strong team player. I believe that you have to take along the people who
Right.
are with you,
Yes.
whether they are in your ministry or in other ministries. And I have coordinated very closely with the Prime Minister's office,
So therefore,
especially in the recent visit that took place.
so there is nothing in this visit that you feel you can be questioned on?
Absolutely not. And all these elements that came together, you know, how many ministries were involved? The administrative arrangements and the liability clause for the civil nuclear deal. I gave directions, I gave guidance, I gave advice. I coordinated very closely with the Prime Minister's office while doing this. And
there was never any negative feedback to what you were doing?
There was, from time to time, there was negative feedback on what the Ministry of External Affairs was doing. I think you've read some of it in the media. You know, I had a fairly long conversation about this with somebody in PMO.
Yes.
And I said, why is it that you've had one successful visit after another successful visit, and that it's the Ministry of External Affairs that's been delivering on these successful visits, and we still keep getting these negative remarks that MEA has not delivered, that MEA doesn't have the big picture. I said, this is the strategic vision on which we are working, of an India.
How frequently did these negative remarks come?
More frequently than I care to count.
So this was the problem, that you felt the work of your ministry was being questioned repeatedly by the PMO.
Yes.
And you've never been given satisfactory reasons for this?
Well, I was told that, look, don't take it personally. This happens with all the other ministries as well. And I could empathize with that, because the Prime Minister is a remarkable man. He's a man with a vision. He's a man who is driven. He's a man who has huge ambitions for the country and for where he sees us in a few years from now. So we needed to work faster, we needed to work quicker. We did that. But after doing all that, if it's still not acknowledged, then I mentioned this. I said, what's up? What's happening? Doesn't make sense to me. And then I was told, look, don't take it personally. It happens with the other ministries as well. And basically, I think.
So was that seen to be defiance? You saying or telling the Prime Minister's office that, look, what is it that we've done wrong? Was that being interpreted as defiance?
I don't know, Vishnu. You tell me. Would you interpret it as defiance?
No, I mean, ma'am, I can only ask the questions, but in
I
your
can look
belief.
at it as feedback. I want feedback. Tell me exactly where we are going wrong.
Right. And you believe that this was seen negatively? You telling the PMO that...
No, I don't believe that at all. I believe the Prime Minister when he says that he wants free and frank advice. And I've always believed, as a civil servant, all my life, not just now, in giving free and frank advice. And I also believe in the political leadership's prerogative to question that advice, that I can defend that advice, and finally give you the prerogative to overrule me if you want. That's the manner in which I function.
Right.